Justin or Dave, you can only see the slide, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Slides are up and looking good, Samantha.
Great. Take 1 minute and we'll get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are joined with Dave Carter. Myself and Dave are going to go over a guide to becoming certified organic in livestock and poultry processing facilities. And I'm Samantha Hilborn-Nalawai. I'm the Southwest Organic Consultant for Rodale Institute. I'm based in northern New Mexico, and my background is more in vegetables and in plant breeding, but I helped out on cow-calf operations in New Mexico when I was younger. So that's a little bit about me. Dave, you want to introduce yourself?
No, first of all, I appreciate folks being on the webinar, and I really appreciate Rodale for putting this together. I'm Dave Carter. I'm a regional director for the Flowery Hill Institute, which has a cooperative agreement with USDA AMS to coordinate a technical assistance network to help people developing new meat and poultry processing facilities. And we'll talk about that as we go forward, but just a little bit of my background. I've worked with General Farm Organization for 25 years, the Farmers Union organization. I've been involved with the bison business. I was director of the National Bison Association for 21 years, but also I served on the National Organic Standards Board from 2001 to 2006. I was just going off the board when Jeff Moyer, your director emeritus, was coming on to there. So Jeff and I got to be good friends. Have done a lot of consulting work. I worked with the Pet Food Institute to cooperate with NOP to develop some draft standards on organic pet food that are still waiting for implementation, and have been involved for quite some time in a range of organic issues. And this webinar and the information is going to be very important because I know that the National Organic Program in particular really wants to see more certified organic meat and poultry processing facilities out there to serve the ranchers that produce the product, but also the consumers that are seeking that product. So with that, we'll jump into it, Samantha.
Great. Just an agenda for today. We're going to talk about our respective organizations. Dave will go over some technical assistance that's available, and then organic meat markets, meat and poultry markets and trends, certifier basics, and then behind the scenes of what goes behind beef and poultry processing. Rodale Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. It's focused on organic agricultural research, training, and education. And their main campus is based in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. As you can see on the map, there are regional resource centers across the U.S. And then the consultants, myself and 13 others are based across the U.S. that help farmers, ranchers, producers, and processors transition to organic. So I really like to share the the statement. So these are 3 prongs. So we aim to expand organic agriculture by assisting farmers in successfully transitioning to organic, conducting research on organic farming methods, and educating consumers on the benefits of organic. And I'll let Dave introduce himself. And
So so let me give you a little insight into the Meat and Poultry Processing Technical Assistance and Flower Hill Institute specifically. So just to give you a little background, and I think those that are on the webinar, share sort of my view on this, but for years we've been told that the most efficient way to produce meat and poultry in the US was to have our system consolidate into these giant, processing firms. So where you've got 4 companies that control 80% of the beef marketplace. Well, I'm a fan of the Wizard of Oz, and I like to say that COVID came along and like little Toto in the Wizard of Oz ripped back the curtain to show really how weak and unresilient that system was. So last year, at the beginning of last year, in fact, in January, one of the first things that the president did was that the Biden administration made a $1 billion commitment to creating a more resilient, diverse, and equitable meat and poultry processing system. But they knew that if they were just going to throw grants out there for people to build processing plants, that was going to be a recipe for disaster. They recognized that what they needed to do was we needed to work with folks to build successful enterprises, all the way from where do we source the animals and how do we raise the animals to how do we go into the marketplace, or what kind of marketplace do we want to go in with our products. And so to that end, they pulled together a really dynamic, diverse group of organizations to provide technical assistance to folks, all the way from finding out what grants might be available and which ones they could be eligible for, to standing up their businesses and getting into the marketplace. And the Flower Hill Institute was brought on to have a cooperative agreement with the Agricultural Marketing Service, the same folks that administer the National Organic Program. And our cooperative agreement has us as the coordination of this technical assistance network. Now, most people are not familiar with the Flower Hill Institute, so I'll give you just a quick background. It's an indigenous-led nonprofit based on the Jemez Pueblo in New Mexico, and they work very strongly in 4 areas: cultural preservation, food and agriculture, youth and STEM, and climate resiliency. And this technical assistance, of course, fits right within their food and agriculture wheelhouse. Go ahead, Samantha. So our scopes of work are really 4-fold with AMS. First of all, our network is tasked with helping people with federal funding technical assistance. And right now, for example, there are 2 grants out there. There's one that's called the Local Meat Processing Capacity Grant and the Indigenous Animal Harvesting Grant. And so we are working with folks to let folks know if they're qualified for that or eligible for that, and to help them through the process of getting that ready. We've been doing that for other grants. We will be doing that for ones coming down the pike. Secondly is agricultural business development. How do you develop? What type of business do you want to have? In terms of, are you looking at maybe a cooperative, a rancher-owned enterprise, or is this something that's just a sole proprietor? And how are you going to develop your business going forward? The third one is the technical and operational support. What you want to do is perhaps maybe it's more applicable to a mobile processing or a modular than a brick and mortar. But if you're going to do with that, what type of floor plan, design, equipment, how are you going to operate? Where are you going to get your workforce? Who's going to handle the bookkeeping, the marketing, all of those things to help people put together that business. And then fourth, and this is probably as a key as anything, is the supply chain development. I have been around for a long time, and I've seen a number of of projects go forward. And the Achilles heel that we have so often is we get really excited because somebody wants to buy these tenderloin strips and ribeyes and the ground beef. But then what do we do with the chucks and the rounds? But particularly, what do we do with the other half of the animal, the offal, the hides, the bones, those type of things that those big processors, they get pennies for many times, but they get something for them. And smaller processors too often are paying to have those hauled to landfills. So we're working to really try and restructure the supply chain so that we can connect, an organic processing plant with a pet food brand that's wanting to market organic products. So that's a key part of what we're working on. We're really pleased that we've got a great group of organizations that are part of our network. So first of all, Flower Hill is coordinating that. But then there's the Niche Meat Processing Assistance Network, which is an extension-based network out of Oregon State University. A lot of folks are familiar with them. Rebecca Thistlethwaite and her group have worked with smaller processors for years. There's the Intertribal Agriculture Council, which is nationwide and already had a group of folks as technical assistance providers even before we came on with the meat and poultry processing. There's the American Association of Meat Processors, which I like to describe them as the largest association of meat processors, but they don't represent the large meat processors. They represent everybody else but the big four. Then there's the American Meat Science Association and the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute. Both of those groups are helping us develop new ways of marketing products that are coming out of these smaller processing facilities. And then we're very pleased that last week, Tuskegee University came on as the newest technical assistance provider. And they are going to help us now reach out to the historically Black colleges and universities, and particularly a lot of minority farmers that we really need to be working with. In addition to those formal organizations, we have now established memorandums of understanding with more than a dozen organizations that are helping us to reach out to underserved producers to make sure that they have access to these resources that are being made available through USDA. Go ahead, Samantha.
Right. So we'll switch gears a little bit and talk about, so there's technical assistance available, but also what does the market look like right now? So just using National Agricultural Statistics Survey in 2021. As you may have guessed, organic produce is the majority share of organic sales, and meat and poultry are a smaller piece of the pie. So, just to give you an idea, I broke it down into commodities. So total organic sales is valued at 11.2 billion. And out of the livestock and poultry, we have milk, which is considered like a livestock product, is 1.6 billion. And then we go down from there, broilers, so we have chickens for meat, is 1.5 billion. And broilers take up a large portion of the meat and poultry production in organic. And then I highlighted the bees, and then we go down to millions. So turkeys, beef cattle, hogs, and pigs are in 195 million, and then we go into 10 million and under 8 million. So that just gives you a bird's eye view of what the market looks like.
Let me just add in here, Samantha, too. I mean, beef and hogs and pigs, very small portion of the market. Part of it is, beef, it wasn't until 1999 that USDA even allowed for beef to be marketed as certified organic. So, they were sort of late coming to the party, and it's small, but it's growing. It's probably one of the sectors that's growing most quickly. What we're seeing, though, is a lot of the beef that's coming into our market is being imported. And so this is a real opportunity for domestically owned processors and cooperatives to take advantage of the growth that's going into that market, because my perception is organic consumers also want to buy products that are locally produced.
Yes. Do you know how much is imported? Half?
Oh, I would say
Is
a
it
beef
more than that?
and a beef probably more than half. You look at Uruguay, New Zealand, they are huge, producers of the imported products that are coming in here. So, we got some catching up to do, and that's why having certified organic processing facilities are a key piece of the puzzle.
Right. And so on overall trends going into, consumer and producer. So due to drought, a lot of beef ranchers have downsized or liquidated. So that means that short term, we're seeing more animals in the meat market, which we've seen a lot of. I talk to a lot of ranchers, and whether they're conventional or organic, they are the bottleneck is at the processing. So there's quite a few animals waiting to be processed. Longer term predictions is that smaller herd size on ranchers is going to see shorter supplies and higher prices. Do you want to talk about how processors can go about this?
What we're looking at is that, again, by having a more dispersed, diversified network of smaller processors who have a relationship with those ranchers, then they can kind of buffer themselves from some of those booms and busts. And I've noticed that the smaller processors that have been successful, as well as the smaller, I wouldn't even say smaller ranchers, let's just say the farmers and ranchers that are really trying to get into not only just the organic, but the other claims-based, avenues for their products. If they have a good relationship with each other that is more collaborative than competitive, then they both succeed. But I know a lot of times, when we saw the impact of COVID, and all of those big processors shut down and it all started to move back to those smaller processors, the ranchers and farmers that were out there that were good, consistent customers of their processors, they kept their slots. They kept their availability to get in. Somebody that was just sort of shopping around and going to this processor now, but maybe this one down in the other town because they were cheaper next month, well, they got to pushed to the curb. So those relationships are very, very important. And Samantha, I'll go down because I kind of put together a marketplace report. You can go onto the Flower Hill Institute website. There's a quarterly market report that we do. And, what we're seeing as we go into 2023 is it's still here. Inflation is ebbing a bit, but it's still here. It's still on people's mind. And we saw, obviously, during the pandemic, everybody ate at home. Nobody was really going to the restaurants unless they could get order out. And we're seeing that trend is continuing. Part of it is a cost savings measure. People can prepare food more efficiently at home. But also people picked up a lot of skills during the pandemic and were able to recreate the recipes that they like. And so they're still using those skills. And that's an opportunity for us to market some products, then some specialized products to those folks. Online shopping really skyrocketed during the pandemic. And we've seen that plateau, but we're seeing it hold steady. And what's interesting is we're seeing that there are more meat purchases. People are getting more comfortable with purchasing meat online, and a lot of the meat processors and marketers are getting better at being able to ship that product, that very perishable product, in a timely manner. So that's, again, an opportunity to connect with customers. But what's very interesting is 4 in 10 meat shoppers are saying that they occasionally buy meat chop, poultry with claims such as organic, grass-fed, or humanely raised. But as you take a look at the younger shoppers, the millennials, the Generation Z, that's much higher. They are much more focused on how that food is being produced. And of course, they are the groups that are coming into the marketplace more heavily. Yep. Go ahead.
Right, so that leads us right into more shoppers are buying organic meat. So why should we go into why should we have more organic processors? So simply put, why do we need more organic processing facilities? And simply put, the best answer I could come up with is that according to the National Organic Program, meat cannot be sold or labeled as organic unless the slaughter and processing facilities. So it occurs at a facility that is certified organic. So the whole supply chain has to be organic. So you have organic flock, organic herd. The processing facility has to be organic in order to get that, organic label right here. And I'll add that most processing facilities, whether you're a co-packer or processing facility, they're processing both organic and conventional. So I don't think any plant is solely going to be doing organic. So it would be an add-on. And I'll let you take this one. So why should you add organic certification to your processing facility, Dave?
Yeah, so I think there's 4 reasons. Number one, as we've been working with folks to developing these smaller processing facilities, my advice to them is if you're just going to produce a 1-pound brick of ground beef that's going to go into Kroger or Walmart or Publix or whatever, and sit next to a 1-pound brick of undifferentiated ground beef from one of the big processors, they're going to knock us to the curb every time. They've got that advantage. What smaller processors have is the ability to market products that have a point of differentiation. They have the slower processing. They can do the segregation. So we need to equip that. And organic is the strongest claim in the marketplace. It is the only claim that has, strong penalties for non-compliance. It's a claim that has the consumer confidence. And the key point is it's not that hard. As Samantha said, almost all of the organic products are produced in plants that also produce conventional. And it's not that difficult to put together an organic systems plan that allows a plant to efficiently and effectively do both conventional and organic products.
So if you're a processor that's interested in certification, there are 5 steps. So this is universal, whether you're crops, livestock. You have to complete an application with the certifying agency. There's a whole bunch to choose from across the US. You will submit an organic system plan to the certifying agency. They will review it. They'll make sure everything's filled out, and then they'll say, okay, looks like everything's good to go. We're going to send out an inspector, and you will have an on-site inspection during the year. And so they'll review the organic. Your inspector will make sure what you say you're doing in your organic system plan is what you're actually doing. So that's all they're there to do. And number 4, they'll inspector and someone from the processing facility will go through the report. You'll say your inspector may have some issues of concern, or you may not. You say okay. The inspector will go back to the certifying agency, and the certifying agency will make a certification decision. And they'll say, you're certified, maybe a denial, or maybe somewhere in between where you have a non-compliance that you need to fix in order for you to become certified organic. And you will
go ahead. Yeah,
Oh.
Samantha.
And you'll do this, you'll do 3 through 5 every year.
Yep.
That was it.
And let me just say, first of all, USDA is putting, the National Organic Program is putting resources. Secretary Vilsack is very committed to helping folks implement these organic systems plan. And as Samantha said, you have to have certified organic production and handling, and that's where the processors come in. Most of the certification agencies that handle certification for these, handling facilities, they've got sort of a template that you can use to fill out. So it's not like you have to go searching for a lot of stuff. You can use a template. Now, those certification agencies can't give you advice. They can't help you with the process. They are there just to tell you what you can and cannot do. But again, through our technical assistance network that we have put together, and particularly with my background in organic certification, then we can help guide you through that process so that you can fill that out and complete that as efficiently as possible.
That's a great point. Yeah. I try to be as clear as possible with the costs associated with the certifier. And there's definitely ranges that are with anything. So there's 2 options that I've kind of sorted out. So pricing can range in between $2,500 to $4,000 per year. That's what one person said. Another inspector said, you have your standard fees of $1,000 to $2,000 that are per year, and that includes your inspection costs. You're paying for the inspector to come out, and then there's an additional rate depending on your gross income. So it'll be $1,000 to $2,000 plus your rate depending on your income. And I feel like most producers that use this USDA reimbursements are mostly smaller livestock and crop producers, but it's always an option to submit this organic cost share reimbursement and the Organic and Transition Education Certification Program. So those are available through your FSA or your state agency, depending on what state you're in. And there's quite a few certifiers. I think when I looked it up, there's quite a few state certifiers. Texas and Montana are also really big. There's quite a few meat processing, animals and meat processing there. So these are certifiers across the US, and there's state certifiers too.
Yeah, there are a ton of certifiers out there, and some certification agencies will be very clear that, well, we don't really do much with, livestock processing or others. And there are others that they really focus on that. So again, if you need some assistance in kind of finding one that does offer that, and as Samantha said, several states do it, Montana, Colorado, some of the others that have, state certification programs, we can help you through with that process.
So let's get down to some of the basic requirements for meat processing. So we have quite a few lists. Some of them a couple may not apply to you if you're a processor, but transportation of animals, if you're transporting animals from the farm to your processing facility, you need to document that. But if they're coming here, then or at the facility, you will just start when they're dropped off. They will want to know, your certifier will want to know your cleaning and sanitation plan. What do you do? What is your process look like? They will want to know your processing. So what happens when they're, for example, from bird to when they're packaged. And in between that, they'll want to know your storage. How are you storing non-organic and organic carcasses? Pest management is always a big aspect. So how are you managing pests? And we will go through that in detail. Sales, not all facilities do like retail sales, but you will need to have certain labels for organic. And then good old record keeping at the end. Got to keep good notes of all the above. So like Dave and I mentioned, most or all processors will be organic and non-organic. So they will be processing both at the same facility. So your inspector is going to want to spend some time talking about how do you prevent commingling of organic and conventional products. And commingling is, the definition is physical contact between organically produced and non-organically produced products during processing, storage, or handling in our case. So how do we prevent commingling? How do we differentiate organic versus conventional? We will separate incoming animals in a separate pen. We will do slaughter and process organic animals at a separate day of time or day of week. The rule of thumb for most processors is you do organic first, and then you move to non-organic. So you, maybe they'll do it Monday morning. You will process all the organic meats first, and then you move on to non-organic for the rest of the week. So after you will identify carcasses as organic, and then as part of organic, you have to keep records and track by ear tag number for larger animals, and then by flock ID for poultry, for all organic slaughter and processing activities.
And let me just add, Samantha, that one of the things when I've talked to processors is they've been concerned of, well, I don't want to have to put in a whole separate cooler to handle my organic, carcasses or whatever. And you can have that segregation without doing that. If you've got your hang cooler there and you've got, 5 rails or whatever, you can just separate them out. You can have your walkway through the hang cooler with organic on one side or the others, or you can just have some sort of a curtain down there or a barrier to make sure that there isn't that physical connection. Same way in your coolers, if you're storing product, you can have your shelving so that your organic products are on top, so that if there's any drippage or anything like that, they're not getting dripped on from the conventional products. Those segregation, separation can be handled without you having to build new facilities within your plant.
So the second main thing that we're gonna go through is pest control and how do you manage pests. So I categorize this is a kind of a different box than all aspects of organic management. So I always tell myself, okay, what are your tools in your toolbox? What can you do to prevent and control pests? So number one, the first one they want to see is structural. So structural is essentially prevention strategies. So you're going to have exclusion and sanitation in facilities. So just having good sanitation practices. Secondly, if you're having an issue, you can go to mechanical lures and traps that are available. And you can use lures and traps that have allowed substances on them. So just double checking that. And then if that's not working, your third tool in your toolbox are allowed materials that are on the national list. So you can have CO2, carbon dioxide fumigation available, ozone, boric acid that's used for ant control, vitamin D3 that's a rodenticide, a mild rodenticide. I know there's a couple more that maybe are allowed. What do you have a couple more, Dave?
Well, yes, and let me just talk about the procedure, because we tend to throw terms around like the national list and all that. And just for those that may be on here that don't live in the organic lingo world, is that under the organic regulations, you have your procedures that you need to follow. So there would be under CFR 7 CFR section 205-271. It talks about your procedures, like your structural, using the mechanical. But then there's also what we call the national list. And the national list is a list of materials that are allowed and prohibited to be used in organic production and handling. So, for example, section 205, 601 are materials that are allowed to be used in crops. 603 is materials that are allowed to be used in livestock. 605 are materials that are allowed to be used in handling. Oh my God, that seems, pretty crazy. So a couple of things. Number one is the National Organic Program has some great resources, some guidance documents that can help you kind of sort through all of that. There's also the Organic Material Review Institute that maintains a list of brand name and generic materials that can be used. So that's all there. The other thing is, and the reason that I wanted to spend some time on this is that this is probably one of the things that as I've worked with organic process or worked with processing facilities that are taking a look at going to organic, there's this fear that, oh my God, if I have to go into the organic and apply the organic pest management standards, I'm going to have rats and cockroaches running around my plant. And that's not the case. That's not the case. First of all, in many areas, facilities that have access to commercial pest management companies that come in and handle your pest management, they have organic protocols. So if you let them know that you're looking to going to organic, they will then bring in their organic protocols. I know that many smaller plants are in areas where there aren't commercial pest management facilities. So that's why we have put together a document that is on the Flower Hill toolkit that gives some guidance, and we did it. It's not an official NOP document, but we worked with the National Organic Program to put this together, kind of guide you through that process so that it's not quite so spooky.
I will link that at the end. It's a great document. So and then the fourth tool on the toolbox is if all of those above structural, mechanical, and these allowed materials, if they're not allowed, you can use materials that are not on the national list. You can use allowed synthetic pesticides, but with conditions. So this is our with conditions. So one, you have to get your certifier approval. And then two, you have to document how you're not going to contaminate your organic products. So you have to have this separation from organic your organic meats. Right, you're not going to have cockroaches and things like that around, because there is a very structured pest control and management strategy.
And it's also important to note that your organic pest control and management system applies to any of the areas where you're handling the food. It doesn't apply to your break rooms, your restrooms, the outside of your building, those type of things. Yeah.
We're not going to go through all sanitizers and cleaners. I just want to give one example of a commonly used sanitizer, which is chlorine-based sanitizers. How do you clean your facility? And then how do you clean foods? Bleach is the most common one. I can't remember the exact names of each chlorine, but there are 4, I believe. So it's used as a food contact surface sanitizer, so you just use it according to label instructions, what's on the label, and you do not rinse, and there is no residue testing. So if you're cleaning a stainless steel surface, you use it and there's no rinse required. And then when used as a food or ingredient sanitizer, again, you use it according to the label restrictions. And then you have to use a rinse with potable water that is tested at or below 4 ppm chlorine. So this does require residue testing and recording. And there is also a guidance on this published by the National Organic Program. I'm not going to go too much into detail about this, but just labeling of products. If you're not doing any retail sales, if it's going back to the producer directly, so you're doing like a bulk label or non-retail label, you would just label here's an example of just what you would put on a whole chicken. So you put organic whole chicken, your lot number, and then maybe your the name of your cooperative or your facility name. So those are the requirements. It's really simple. For a retail label, there's quite a few requirements, such as the USDA symbol, the size, things like that. We're not going to get into that, but there's 100% organic, 95% organic, which is 95%, and then made with organic ingredients, which is at least 70% organic. So this is what I think of like sausages and things like that that are completely 100% organic. It's just a multi-ingredient product.
Let me just weigh in on a couple of things here. Yeah, so for example, the organic 95%, the other 5% has to be and this is 95% excluding salt and water, but it has to be materials that are allowed on the national list. And then under the made with organic ingredients, those products cannot carry the organic seal, but they can say on the front label that they are made with organic beef, made with organic chicken. And then the other 30% of the ingredients cannot be GMO, grown with sewage sludge, kind of the standard, what we call the big 3. The other thing that's very important, Samantha keeps talking about the audit trail, is that if you as a processor are bringing in your livestock from certified organic producers, then you need to have a copy of their organic certificate on file. That's your audit trail to say we're buying from Valley Meats Cooperative, or we're buying from XYZ Ranch. they are certified organic. We have a copy of their certificate on our files. That's sort of the baseline of having that audit trail in place.
Right, and your inspector will verify all of that.
Yes.
So that goes, these are things you may already do in your record keeping as a business, as a, good business practices that you may already do, and you can just apply them to your organic system plan. So whatever certifier you decide, you will probably have to talk about all of these things. You will have sheets. What does that look like? Storage and packaging practices. You'll go through your pest management practices. What do you do? What are you using? And you'll document all that. Again, list of inputs, cleaning materials and sanitizers. Like Dave said, certificates. So certificates of where the animals or flocks are coming from, that they're certified organic. Labels of what sanitizers you're using, things like that. If you have labels, you need to have compliant labels so we can help you make sure that your labels are compliant with the standards. All of these things, and then last thing are HACCP plans in place if you're a USDA inspected facility. I'm gonna skip the next slide, but I wanna spend just maybe the rest of our time, so we have about 10 minutes, talking a little bit free form with Dave about some of these things that are related to organic processing, and if you're things you need to do. So I wanted to talk about state and federal inspected facilities versus maybe even mobile slaughter units. What are you seeing happening there? And yeah.
So great. No, thank you. So, all states, of course, have USDA inspection. Many states have state inspection programs that are, and the keywords are deemed at least equal to USDA inspection. That means that those products that go through those state inspected facilities can be sold within the state, but they can't be shipped out of state. If they are, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, if they are an amenable species, which means beef, pork, poultry. Ironically, if they are a non-amenable species, such as bison or deer, those products from a state inspected facility can be shipped interstate. Now, many states with state inspection programs have entered into an agreement with USDA under what they call the Cooperative Interstate Shipment Program, which allows then those state inspected products, amenable species products, beef, pork, poultry, to be shipped interstate. Now, the key thing is federal inspected, state inspected, CIS inspected can all also be organic certified. You can be an organic certified state inspected process facility, even if you can't ship your products from one state to the other. You can still have that organic certification. So that's not a barrier. Then more and more smaller processing enterprises are utilizing mobile slaughter units, which are, a trailer that you take out into the pasture and you drop the animals in the pasture, you take them into this unit on a semi, and they break down the carcass into the halves and have a drip cooler there, and then take them to a fixed facility then to do the hanging and the cut and wrap. Those slaughter units can be certified organic as well. You just have to have in your organic systems plan that if you are going out to an organic, going out to a ranch that's a certified organic, they've got their certification as well. And you have to do some other things to be USDA certified in terms of having handling facilities for those animals, a pen where they can come in and the inspector can do their anti-mortem inspection to make sure the animals are healthy. Again, as Samantha said earlier, your HACCP plan needs to also include your organic procedures in there. And then feasibility and business planning, again, that's where the meat and poultry processing technical assistance program can step in and help you. We can't write your feasibility studies or your business plans, but we can certainly assist you in that process. And we have a database of some consultants that can help you along the way as well.
Great. And I'll go ahead and leave our information here and we'll open it up for questions, I think. And I will pull up and share the guidance. But if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself or ask in the chat.
And I just put into the chat the website for the Flower Hill Institute, because any processor that is out there that wants to take a look, wants to have technical assistance, organic certification or otherwise, we invite you to go on. You go onto our website. There's a link to the MPPTA, and they can go in and request the technical assistance that comes into our system, so we can circle back and work with them directly. We don't have any open questions. We must have answered all their questions, Samantha. So I do see on your next slide, you do have the information there on how people can apply for technical assistance too.
Yes.
Yep.
You have a great QR code.
Yeah, so if you want the QR code, you just take a picture of that. That goes right to the form that you can use to apply for technical assistance. And and then we will circle back with you and work with you directly. I see that somebody's talking about there is no mandatory transition period. Yes, there are. For livestock, you have that 3-year transition period as well in terms of the pasture and the land, the protocols. So those animals have to be on land that is eligible. Now, there's a lot of land out there that's eligible for organic certification without you having to start the 3-year clock at the time. There's a lot of land coming out of CRP, for example, that hasn't had any chemicals sprayed on it for 3 years. And so if you have record keeping that shows that, you can kind of get a head start on that. The animals themselves, the livestock, has to be for beef, bison, the like, has to be organically produced from the last trimester of the animal. So that mother has to be treated organically from the last third of gestation for the calf or, the whatever. For poultry, it's organic from the first or second day of life. I forget, of the chick, the second day of life for the chick. You can tell I'm a 4-legged critter guy. So there is a transition period or a time when the clock will start. That's a good question.
sorry,
Any other questions? Yeah.
now everyone can see the guidance that I posted, so everyone can use that as a resource.
Yep.
So we have another question that said, so time period for the processing plant per se. So I think there is no transition period for a processing
Yeah.
plant. You just
Yeah, that's a good question. If that's what you're asking, with your processing plant, once you have an approved organic systems plan and you go through your certification and your desk audit, and then they'll come in, do the approved audit. Once you're certified, you're good to go. Yeah, you're ready to go into be able to accept those certified organic animals into your plant and go into the organic marketplace. And one of the things too, just we didn't cover it, but just consider the fact that your organic handling really covers all the time when those products before they go into the consumer ready package. So if you've got for example, a roll stock machine, or you're doing the cryovac, whatever, once your product is in that sealed package and ready to go to the consumer, then your requirements, other than your labeling requirements, really become fairly easy, because then the chances for that product to have contamination or be commingled or anything is, greatly reduced.
Great. Well, you have our contact information. There's lots of resources available. I'd like to thank you, Dave, for coming and sharing your wealth of information. And
I thank the Rodale Institute for putting this together, and having this available so other people can tune in and listen to this. Because I'll tell you, one of the first things that happened when USDA put together the Technical Assistance Network was I got a call from the folks at USDA saying, how can we get more of these processors to be certified organic? And so that is a real priority for us. So we really want to work with anyone who wants to take a look at that, because that then gives you an opportunity to go into a marketplace in which you can reach out to consumers with a differentiated product. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
yeah, thank you.